Good morning and welcome to another episode of The Extra Point here on ESPN 1600. As always, I'm your host, Roland Rainey, and I'm joined with my fellow colleagues, Robert Parker from New Jersey, Jeremy Coleman from Indiana, and Justice Gordon from New York. Gentlemen, there's a lot of free agency frenzy going on, but let's talk about not free agency, but let's talk about some of the players who have made some significant splashes in the offseason already. Now, the very first one I want to bring up has a lot of controversy around it because of how he ended his time with the Philadelphia Eagles. Some of the, let's say, poor publicity or bad publicity he's gotten from it, and that is Wentz. He is now with the Colts. What did you guys think? Was this a good place for him to land? And did the Philadelphia Eagles actually treated him appropriately as he started explaining that he doesn't feel that that organization is right for him anymore?
Well, I think it seemed like a very logical place for him to end up. He didn't want to be in Philly, with Frank Reich being the head coach in Indianapolis. It just seemed like the perfect marriage. And he basically came out and said that that's where he wanted to go because he knew Frank Reich still believed in him. He still believes he can be, that MVP type player that he was, 3-4 seasons ago. And I feel like the Colts got away with a little bit of a grand larceny as far as a trade goes here. That they have a young quarterback now who could very well be the future of that franchise. They only gave up a third-round pick this year, a conditional second, which may become a first-rounder next year. But most teams in the NFL will be very happy to give up a first and a third-round pick alone to potentially pick up a franchise quarterback. People here in Indy were at first, a little skeptical at first because they don't remember the Carson Wentz that played 3 years ago. They only remember these past 2 years where he's been beaten up and hasn't played well. I told them patience is going to persevere here. I feel like the Colts got away with a grand larceny steal here in free agency.
Well, that's the biggest thing, Jeremy, that I think a lot of hesitation and the jury is still out on Wentz because of how he's played over the last couple of seasons. Now, let's be honest, the way he ended his time there in Philly, he can point the fingers in every which direction, but he had an opportunity to be a great teammate, but instead he kind of isolated himself away from the team. And trust me, his teammates had a lot to say about it. So as I look at this, yes, from a trade perspective, from the front office perspective, this was a great pickup. But looking at the talent that he has, looking at that offensive line, looking at that backfield, some of the wide receiver weapons, is this going to be a team that can reignite what Wentz was once before? What's your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Colts have a variety of weapons around them right now to help Wentz succeed. I mean, we're talking about last year. I thought they were a quarterback away from being an AFC championship contender, a Super Bowl contender even. Phillip Rivers, we all know he had a great career, but that arm was completely gone. It's been gone for a few years. And now that they have Carson Wentz, I think they have a real shot at, competing for that Super Bowl. Xavier Rhodes, I think he's a free agent. It'll be interesting to see if he comes back. I think he turns 33, 34, around that age. So, it's going to be interesting to see what they do to replace him on the defensive end. But that defense is top 5. Darius Leonard, Forrest Buckner. It's a great team. Talk about a fit with Frank Reich. I think it's a great spot for Carson Wentz to, rejuvenate himself and remind people who he is. In terms of the Philadelphia Eagles, this is a terrible trade. I mean, first off, the value for it, a second-round pick and a third-round pick and a conditional second-round pick. It's questionable. DeAndre Hopkins, he went for a second-round pick. Stephon Diggs went for a first-round pick. It's just the value didn't match up. I think it was an absolute steal for the Colts. And I think the Eagles are really going to regret this because Jalen Hurts, he was 1-4 in the 4 games he started, 52% completion percentage, 6 touchdowns, 6 throwing touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's a guy. He's a guy who likes to move, get outside the pocket. But My main concern has always been with anticipation throws with him. We see what's happening with Lamar Jackson in Baltimore right now. Teams are scheming around his athletic ability, and Jalen Hurts doesn't have anywhere near that athletic ability Lamar Jackson does. And I think if he doesn't find a way to make it work from the pocket and, get teams worried about him in the pocket, it's going to be a terrible trade for the Philadelphia Eagles down the road.
So, Robert, both Jeremy and Justice have hit on something that I thought is very intriguing here, and it makes me wonder, because of the value of the trade, did the Philadelphia Eagles send the message that we think this guy does not have it anymore, and we're kind of willing to take pennies on the dollar on getting rid of him? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, Roland. And it pretty much obviously showed that, Carson Wentz wasn't going to be the guy moving forward when they drafted Jalen Hurts. And, the narrative surrounding, the Eagles drafting Jalen Hurts was that, they actually drafted him a little bit too high. So if you're going to draft a quarterback, that high, he's going to play, maybe not in the first year. You saw Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs move up to get Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he didn't play in his first year, but at the end of the day, you knew eventually he was going to start. And that's what's going to happen with Jalen Hurts. And just like Justice and Jeremy said, I tell you what, the Colts got the better end of this deal by far. I mean, we've seen what Carson Wentz can do. Before he got hurt, he was on an MVP caliber season. And I'm so happy for this Indianapolis Colts franchise because, you had the early retiring of Andrew Luck. So just like Jeremy mentioned, you can get a quarterback who's still young and can be that franchise quarterback moving forward. And you have Jonathan Taylor, a young stud running back that can kind of relieve the pressure off of, Carson Wentz. And I'll tell you what, Carson Wentz did play terribly last year, but that offensive line was beat up. He was devoid of weapons on the outside, and it really seems like he's coming into a perfect position with the Indianapolis Colts, especially with this old offensive coordinator, leading the charge at the head coach position. So I'm all for this if I'm an Indianapolis Colts fan, but if you're an Eagles fan, pretty much you're starting over from scratch.
So I want to highlight something because I think this is important to bring up. Each one of you, to include people out there and some of the fans, you guys all used the same one word. You said when he was. And that's a lot of the folks out there. That's what they're looking at with him. They're looking at when he was, not what he can be. So I'm very curious if there's folks out there who've just given up on him, one, because of injuries, two, because of the inaccuracies, three, because his field of vision has, almost become tunnel vision at times. Has he lost something? Was after that injury, and of course, after the backup steps up, wins the Super Bowl and gets the MVP, sometimes psychologically that can affect a player. Has Wentz basically regressed? And do you truly believe the new head coach there can really invigorate him to take on the new challenges, get in the gym, get the workouts in, open that field of vision, go through his progressions down the field? Can he turn this around? Does he have it in him? Because right now, there's a lot of folks across the league that don't believe in Wentz. What's your guys' thoughts?
Well, I think the big thing is his confidence regressed. I mean, he has no confidence in his offensive line down really these last 2 years with how beat up it's been. And then this past year, he had no confidence in his chemistry with receivers. Look at who he was throwing to, in an abnormal offseason, where there was no, offseason workouts, untraditional training camp. He was throwing to Jalen Reagor for maybe a month before they started, suited up for week one. I think it's hard pressed to put a bunch of new receivers and a quarterback together and expect them to have instant chemistry, in a year where they barely got to practice. So I think his confidence is something that Frank Reich can definitely restore because he's the guy who was the offensive guy when he was in Philadelphia and when he went on to have such a great year.
Well, I tell you, the one thing that is very promising, and Justice hit it on the head, these guys were just a game away from flipping the table on what the actual Super Bowl may have looked like. So when you actually look at that, and they were able to pull that off with a Phillip Rivers, hey, if you get a Wentz with some confidence back, get some of those mechanics down, then you might have a team that is a serious, serious threat. And of course, they're going to pick up a couple of other players here in the offseason. So, I mean, truly, the sky's the limit for them. I think there's a lot of positive things that they can take away. We'll see what it all boils down to. So let's kind of swing this over to something that I'm very curious on what your thoughts are. I know there's a lot of fans who are excited about this particular pickup, but I'm going to tell you, I got a lot of reservations about this one. And this is J.J. Watt going to the Arizona Cardinals. Look, gentlemen, let's kind of put a couple of things in perspective, right? 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, can't defeat, you can't, refute that. The guy's legit. But here's a couple of things that he said and how his contract was structured, right? So we're looking at $31 million with 23 guaranteed. He definitely knows the quarterback. Matter of fact, they have a great relationship. He definitely has a relationship with several other players on the team. He has a relationship with the defensive coordinator, Vance Joseph, who was there with the Houston Texans for 3 seasons. Then you start looking at, okay, who is he teaming up with? So he has Chandler Jones. Look, that could be a pretty unique dynamic duo. And plus you got B2 behind him, Baker. That definitely can give him some confidence there. He also talked about this team being a team that is hungry. Now, all of that sounds great. It sounds awesome. I'm getting into my little bit of Stephen A right now. When Stephen A gets very cynical about the Dallas Cowboys, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm getting cynical about, is this the right fit, or is this a guy who is at the end of his career because of the health issues, all the different injuries? It's a great pickup because it draws media attention. It draws the fans in. Look, he's a great leader in the locker room. He can motivate a lot of the young guys. He's already stated that a lot of these young guys are in the gym. He loves that aspect of them. Is this the right fit for J.J. Watt? Robert, I'm coming to you.
Yeah, just like you said, Roland, I have some reservations in regards to, this move with J.J. Watt going to the Arizona Cardinals. Now, if you asked this question a couple years ago and you asked me, was this a good move? And I would have said, yeah. But, over the past couple of seasons, we've seen the deterioration of J.J. Watt, from his health and injury standpoint. And I tell you what, J.J. Watt said he wanted to go and compete for a Super Bowl. And I tell you what, going to the Arizona Cardinals, I don't think you have a legitimate chance of competing for the Super Bowl. I mean, me personally, I would have loved to see J.J. Watt go to the Pittsburgh Steelers to play with his brother. I would have loved to see J.J. Watt go to the Green Bay Packers or, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or someone who's right on the cusp of actually winning the Super Bowl. But for going to the Arizona Cardinals, and I know he has a lot of, trust in Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins and all of those guys. But if J.J. Watt is going to be the piece to bring you over the top and help you win the Super Bowl, I just don't see it right now in the latter part of his career.
Well, that's something that he's talked about. He's actually stated several times that, no football team out there should be waiting and building 3-4 years down the road to try to get to a Super Bowl. They need to be doing it right here, right now, in the year that they're in. I just don't know what he sees, with the exception of relationships and a hungry team, that the Cardinals are prepped and primed to catapult themselves as a Super Bowl contender right now. I don't know, Jeremy.
Yeah. What you said, Arizona's hungry doesn't mean they're necessarily ready to go all the way and win a Super Bowl. I don't think they're a team that's like a piece or two away. I feel like they're a solid year away before they're really starting before they were even really considered a real contender. So very puzzling to me. You know, me being a Steelers fan, yeah, it would have been great to see Watt in Pittsburgh. But the reality is that the cap situation in Pittsburgh was never going to let that happen. And if the Steelers wanted to make it happen, they needed to move a lot faster than they have this offseason. They would have needed to make a much firmer decision on whether Ben was going to give up all this money like he did this week. But just puzzling move overall. Yeah, I would have figured him, you know, being a good fit to go down to Tampa Bay, win one with Tom Brady, or maybe go up to, you know, up north with Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers and winning one up there. I thought those two, if he really wanted to chase a ring, those were the two destinations I thought he was going to go to. I know Buffalo was mentioned. They're not as close as those other two teams are.
With his health issues, is the $23 million guaranteed a smart move on the behalf of the Cardinals?
Well, the interesting thing about that is he was getting a bigger offer from contenders, Super Bowl contenders. He was getting offered more money from the Colts and, you know, teams like that. So when you kind of look at it from that aspect, yeah, $23 million guaranteed seems like a lot, but there were a lot of other teams offering him more money. So I think that makes it even a more puzzling decision because you have these top contenders offering you more money and you choose a team that's kind of sitting in the back seat right now for less money. I mean, the only thing I can think of is DeAndre Hopkins. He must be really good friends with DeAndre Hopkins to
He must be really good friends for that move. Yes.
That is the only thing that makes sense to me because yes, Kyler Murray is a stud. Yes, Chandler Jones is a top 5 edge rusher. You got Isaiah Simmons, Budda Baker. They got a lot of good pieces to moving forward, but like Jeremy and Robert said, I look at Green Bay. There is no better fit. Going back to Wisconsin, playing with Aaron Rodgers, Jair Alexander is probably the most underrated player in the league right now. A top 2, top 3 corner. They have a legitimate chance to win a Super Bowl, and that would have been the place that I would have loved to see him go. And, you know, we're going to see, you know, what this Cardinals team can do. But like Robert said, I think they're a good year or two away from actually being a Super Bowl contender.
Well, and to me, real quick, just to add what Justice said, you had a chance to go play for 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and you chose Kyler Murray, who, don't get me wrong, has a chance to be very good, but he still has a little bit to prove too. So I just thought it was very interesting that you pass up an opportunity to play with 2, you know, Super Bowl, future Hall of Fame quarterbacks when chasing the ring was supposedly the thing you wanted to do this offseason.
So this is very interesting. So let's peel the onion back on this one. This is a great conversation. And for our fans listening out there, I hope you're taking away some of these very valuable points that the team here is putting together. One of the things that intrigues me the most about his decision, and I'm wondering about this, a lot of players like J.J. Watt, when there are relationships in place already and being a very vocal player that he is, a locker room leader, so forth and so on, they think they can have an impact in the sense of how their side of the ball is orchestrated. So when I look at the relationship that he has with Vance Joseph, is he thinking that I'm going to go in here with this legitimate relationship and transform that defense and put my stamp on it? This is going to be my defense. This is going to be, you know, along with Vance Joseph, this is going to be kind of our moment to put something unique together. I've really wondered about that because, to your guys' point, nothing else makes sense with the exception of just relationships. Relationships is the only thing that makes sense right now.
Well, you know what, to just to talk about that, Roland, with the relationships, and you know that's understandable to a certain extent. You normally want to go into a work environment where you have those working relationships, where you know the job might be a little bit easier, where you might be a little bit more comfortable in the workplace. And just like you said, J.J. Watt has those relationships with a lot of the people in that Arizona Cardinals organization. And maybe that's one thing that kind of pulled him to Arizona versus a lot of other teams. But just going back on what J.J. Watt said, if he wants to really chase that ring and compete for a Super Bowl, I think he could have did that in any other, avenue, especially with the Green Bay Packers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Indianapolis Colts that we talked about, and even Buffalo. I know Buffalo is not, on the cusp of being a Super Bowl contender, but they're not too far away, and they're a little bit more further along than the Arizona Cardinals. So I think, that working relationship with, the people within that organization and the defensive coach did have an impact on that.
So what I will say in regards to this, I don't want to jump the gun here, fans, but do I see the Arizona Cardinals going to the Super Bowl just because they got J.J. Watt? The answer is no. No. I don't even know what else I can say. The answer is just no. So, and it's not like he has 5-7 years on his wheels left. Basically he's on his last legs. So I would not be surprised if this is not a retirement place. I would not be surprised if this is where he wants to end his career, not necessarily because he wants to end it with the Cardinals, but this is where he wants to live his retirement days, or whatever he sees after football. And what I'm very curious about is, how well is that body going to hold up? Is he going to be able to play a full season? So a whole lot to take away from this one, fans. But, this J.J. Watt signing is definitely one that has a lot of folks out there very puzzled. So you've been listening to The Extra Point here on ESPN 1600. I'm your host, Roland Rainey, joined with my colleagues Robert, Jeremy, and Justice. And I want to jump into this one, guys, because I said it, and I said it over and over again. Let's go back to the Saints and what everybody assumed was the farewell last final game of Drew Brees. Yes, the nice pretty picture of him and Brady being on the field, Brady tossing the ball to his kids, the nice pretty hug at the very end. That's all great, right? But there is something I will never forget. The way he looked back at that empty Superdome, there was no way he was going to end his career that way. There was just no way. He left to a silent arena. That's not the way he's lived his career. That's not the way I truly believe he was ever going to end his career. Now, of course, COVID and so forth, hopefully next season, the Superdome is going to be packed with players. He's already out there hitting the gym hard. He was out there on the sled. He's showcasing the fact that, hey, I'm putting in the work to increase my muscle and my tone. What do you think, guys? Is this the right decision for Drew Brees to come back?
Well, of course it is. I think he's been one of the best competitors in all of the NFL the past few years. I mean, in all honesty, he's been injured a few times the past few years. I think people thought this year with I think it was 11 or 12 cracked ribs, that might kind of be the final straw, but he just keeps coming back. I mean, there's been the retirement rumors now for the last 2 or 3 off seasons that he might be willing to call it quits. So I wasn't too surprised that he was coming back. He's a fierce competitor. And like you said, he's not going out to a quiet stadium. He's going to go out to the roars and cheers of that city.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Jeremy. I take this as being the Tom Brady effect. We've seen Tom Brady kind of pushing the envelope and kind of staying there and just saying he wants to play to 45. And just like everyone else has said about Drew Brees going out the way that he went out this past season, I just don't see him going out that way. You kind of see him going out to, just like Jeremy kind of, said earlier about, going out to the fans, going out to, another record being broken or something like that, but just not going out the way that he went this past season. But you're going to see this, pretty fairly moving forward with a lot of these quarterbacks trying to, stay and hold on to the game into their late and mid 40s. So I think this is definitely the Tom Brady effect trickling down to, all these other quarterbacks.
Yeah, from a competitive aspect, I agree with all you guys. It's just not something Drew Brees is going to do. He's a competitor. He loves to play the game. And, just the way he went out against Tom Brady, how that team, kind of couldn't get over the hump this year. And that's been kind of a theme these last 3 or 4 years. You talk about the Minnesota Miracle. You talk about the Los Angeles Rams, that pass interference call that was never called. It's just been a tough, few years for the Saints team and Drew Brees. And, I have no problem with him, giving it one more go. The only thing I'm concerned about is, and I'm going to call him out right now, is Michael Thomas. Look, this guy is a top 3 talent at receiver in this whole league. But the way he was shut down in that playoff game, that's completely unacceptable. He's got to do better. He got paid like a number 1 receiver, and he needed to come up in that moment. So with Drew Brees coming back, I need a spark under Michael Thomas because – this team has what it takes with Marshawn Lattimore, with the pieces they have on defense. They have the pieces to do it, but the theme has been the key players haven't stepped up in the key game over these past few years. And I expected Michael Thomas, to be that player that we've all seen this past year, and to see what he did was very disappointing. So, I hope Drew Brees, can get this team together. I hope he stays healthy. He broke 11 ribs this year or so. I hope he can stay healthy, and I hope this team can, really get over the hump this year because they're talented enough to do it.
Yeah, once again, all of you guys hit the point. The competitive juices are always going to be there with him, but the one concern that you always have to have is his health. Can he withstand the hard hits? We saw what happened this past season. We hope him nothing but the best. I think this is a good thing for the city, especially once we can get over this COVID hump and get people back in the stadium. Just maybe that energy could be regenerated and things can turn around there in New Orleans. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Extra Point here on ESPN 1600. And once again, on behalf of my colleagues, Robert, Jeremy, and Justice, we've been talking about some of the off-season craziness from the Wentz trade to the signing of J.J. Watts to Drew Brees unretiring or not going out on retirement. And there's just so much more. And we are going to be bringing that to you every week leading all the way up to the draft. And for next week, pay attention because here the team is going to be out in Indy at the National Scouting Combine right under the tutelage of CEO Jimmy Kimmel, who's going to have a lot of the Division II, Division III type players going through his combine. And we here at the Extra Point will be there live, interviewing players, doing scouting reports, and seeing if there's any talent there to get them to the next level. Once again, everyone out there, have a great week, and we will see you here next week on the Extra Point.